Hey everybody, it's Miss MK with Boys and Girls Club. So today I wanted to show you how you can make fresh pasta from scratch, which can be a really fun activity to be able to do with friends and family and get everybody in on it. Get a little bit messy, but have fun doing it. And in addition to learning some food science, it's actually an activity you can eat. So what's better than that? So because this entire process can take around 20 to 30 minutes at a minimum, I'm not going to be able to show you everything from start to finish, but I can show you the different stages of things to look for as you go through this process. Let's check it out. So anytime you are cooking, please always make sure you wash your hands and that they're nice and clean so that we're all good and safe when we're working with food, especially because you're going to need your hands a lot for this activity. But as far as ingredients go, it's really quite simple. All you need is half a cup of flour and 1 egg, and that's all you see right here. I've made a sort of mound out of the flour, and I've made a sort of well in the middle of it so that way the egg can sit inside of it. So that way it's easier to work with when you're incorporating everything. So kind of once you've had that process already done, you're going to try and like scramble your egg just a little bit. So that way it's all broken up and it makes it easier to incorporate into the flour. And the reason you have it set up in this little like well, kind of like I have here, is so that way it's a lot easier to just kind of slowly bring together. It traps in that yolk a little bit, or the egg yolk and white a little bit, but slowly it will start to fall out, kind of like you just saw. But it'll also come together the more that you work with it. So the way that this kind of goes is that once it starts incorporating, it's going to start turning into a little bit more of a dough that looks probably more similar to like bread dough or something like that you've seen before, and becomes a lot more firm. Because as you can see, the more that I'm mixing this, of course it gets really messy and all over my hands and all over my cutting board, but you can see that it's starting to kind of firm up, and it's no longer in its like two separate pieces. It's not as liquidy as it used to be with just the egg in there, and it's starting to kind of even change color a little bit as the flour takes on the color of that yolk. And so the more that you incorporate this, what you're going to start to do now is, like, as you go through the process, again, a little bit easier with 2 hands, but for the sake of this video, I'm working with what I can with my one. You're going to move it around a lot, and you're going to keep working it with your hands. Now, this is the process that's going to take maybe around 10 to 20 minutes because it's called kneading. And the entire kneading process is super important because it develops the gluten, which acts as a binder in your pasta. So it keeps it together and it keeps it from breaking. So for example, and it's also like present in a lot of like other breads and things like that. So if you've ever seen people making pizza dough, for example, then what you would see is them like tossing it in the air and like stretching it out. Gluten is what allows it to stretch it out without breaking and like ripping into pieces. So that's why it's super important to have this. So by the time you get through it, it's going to start to look like this a little bit. You want to keep kneading and rolling it until it looks like this, where it is nice and smooth and also firm to the touch. See, only so much indent. And it's very important that you make sure that that happens so that way it's easier to like cut through. Now you can let your pasta dough rest, which is something I like to do for about maybe 10 minutes or so in this cling wrap, and maybe for in the refrigerator, so that way it gets a little bit of time to just chill out after it's been all through that kneading process. And then what you're going to be able to do is you'll bring it back onto another cutting board. So this is what your next step would look like. You would dust that cutting board with a little bit of this extra flour to make sure that nothing sticks to it. If it needs a little bit more kneading, what you may need to consider is adding a little more flour if it needs to not be as soft and become more firm, or add a little bit of water if it is too crumbly. What you'll do is you'll go over with a little bit of flour. You'll roll it out as thin as you possibly can, your pasta dough. I did not use a rolling pin, but it'll probably give you the best results if you can, but it won't be an issue if you don't have that. So worst case scenario, you roll it out as flat as you can, and you'll cut it into any shapes that you like, remembering that the shapes with similar sizes are going to work the best in the cooking process. So I hope you enjoyed making this pasta dough, which will end up looking like this, and watch for the cooking process in another video.